Coco Gauff was facing an investigation, and the tennis world couldn't stop talking about it. 7 double faults, a medical timeout, a sudden retirement, and a crowd left completely stunned inside Stadium 1 at Indian Wells. But here's where the story gets uncomfortable, because the moment Gauff walked to the net and told Alexandra Eala, "I'm sorry, I hate to do this," the internet didn't offer sympathy. It started asking questions. Dark questions, ugly questions, and some of those questions turned into accusations that shook the sport to its core. This is the story behind the match that broke the internet on International Women's Day 2026. Stay with us, because nothing about this is simple. And the truth? The truth is far more powerful than any conspiracy. To understand why everything exploded the way it did on that Sunday night in Indian Wells, you have to first understand who these two women are and what was riding on this match long before the first ball was ever struck. Coco Gauff, 21 years old, world number 4, two-time Grand Slam champion, the 2023 U.S. Open winner, the 2025 French Open champion, the first American woman to win Roland Garros since Serena Williams. She is, without question, one of the most important athletes in the world right now, not just in tennis. She carries the weight of a generation on her shoulders, the expectations, the politics, the pressure, the relentless spotlight that has followed her since she was a 15-year-old kid beating Venus Williams at Wimbledon and making the world's jaw drop. And then there is Alexandra Eala, 20 years old, world number 31, Filipino, a player who just 12 months ago was ranked number 140 in the world, and who in the space of one breathtaking year transformed herself into a weapon that nobody on the WTA Tour could afford to ignore. A semifinal run at the Miami Open where she defeated 3 former Grand Slam champions. A crowd of supporters at Indian Wells so large and so loud that the line to get general admission seating for her first match stretched over 100 people deep. She hadn't just arrived on the tour, she had arrived in the conversation. And here's what made this specific match so electric before it even began. Just 2 weeks earlier, at the Dubai Tennis Championships, Coco Gauff had beaten Eala in the quarterfinals. Not just beaten her, demolished her. 6-love, 6-2. A scoreline so one-sided that it barely felt like a contest. Eala acknowledged it openly. Gauff had played exceptionally well. The margin was stark. There was nothing to dispute. So when the draw at Indian Wells placed them back on the same side of the bracket in the third round, the tennis world leaned forward. This was the rematch. This was the storyline. A rising superstar from the Philippines seeking revenge against the reigning French Open champion in front of a massive crowd at the so-called 5th Grand Slam on International Women's Day. The stage could not have been more perfectly set. Stadium 1, prime time, the whole world watching. What nobody knew, what nobody could have predicted, was that within 55 minutes, the night would stop being about tennis altogether. And this is where it gets complicated, because what happened next didn't just spark a conversation, it sparked a firestorm that had people questioning everything. When the match began, it looked briefly like Gauff was going to impose herself the way she had in Dubai. She broke Eala in the very first game, clean and aggressive, just like the script suggested she would. The crowd stirred. This was the Coco Gauff they expected, dominant, purposeful, suffocating in her consistency. And then, in the second game, something changed. It wasn't dramatic at first. Nobody in the stands saw it. The cameras didn't catch it. But Gauff felt it, a sensation in her left arm that she would later describe in terms that were almost impossible to ignore. It felt like a firework was going off inside of my arm, and then my whole arm felt like it was on fire. Those were her exact words in the post-match press conference. Not discomfort, not tightness, fire, a firework. Nerve pain so unfamiliar, so foreign to her body that she had no framework for understanding it in the moment. She tried to continue. That's the part people need to sit with. Coco Gauff tried to keep playing. She tried to fight through it. She broke down in service, 7 double faults in the first set alone, compared to 0 for Eala. Her first serve percentage collapsed to 43.6%. She was converting just 49% of points on her first serve. These numbers don't lie. She was not the same player. She was physically compromised from almost the very beginning, and yet she refused to stop. Eala, for her part, was brilliant. Not just good, brilliant. Focused, aggressive, tactically precise. She was making 68% of her first serves. She converted 5 of her 6 breakpoint opportunities. She broke off 5 times in the first set. She did not give an inch. She played the kind of tennis that had made her one of the most talked about players on the planet in 2025. And she played it without mercy, the way champions play when the opportunity is right in front of them. By the time Gauff called the medical timeout at 2-5 down in the first set, the match was already over in all but name. A trainer massaged her left shoulder and forearm. Between sets, they applied a compression bandage. The crowd watched. The commentators speculated. And Eala waited, composed, professional, ready. When Eala broke Gauff in the second game of the second set, the American walked to the net. Eala didn't notice at first. She was still in match mode, still tracking the ball. It was only when Gauff leaned on the net, quietly, that Eala turned and saw her, and then they embraced. 2 young women, on International Women's Day, at the end of a match that the sport would be talking about for weeks, for entirely different reasons than either of them could have anticipated. "I'm sorry, I hate to do this," Gauff told her. Eala answered, "I hope you feel better." Final score, Eala wins, 6-2, 2-0, retirement. And then the phones came out. Here is the truth about modern sports. The moment a match ends, especially a match that ends in controversy or shock, the narrative no longer belongs to the players. It belongs to the internet. And the internet, on the night of March 8th, 2026, International Women's Day, did what the internet always does. It picked a side, it built a case, and it demanded answers. Within hours of the retirement, social media was flooded, not with sympathy for Gauff's injury, not with celebration for Eala's incredible run, with suspicion, with accusations. The word gamesmanship started appearing in comment sections. People pointed to the medical timeouts, the timing of them, the placement of them within the set, coming precisely when Eala was in full momentum. Fans of Eala, particularly from the Philippines, where this result was being celebrated as a national moment of pride, were furious. They had watched their player be decimated 6-0, 6-2 in Dubai just 2 weeks earlier. They had watched Eala spend every day since then in practice, working, grinding, preparing for the rematch. And now, just as she was delivering the best tennis of her career against one of the world's best players, the match ended. Just like that. Retirement. The discourse wasn't confined to comment sections. Podcasts were recording emergency episodes. Tennis forums were running thread after thread. The word being used, the word that crossed from whisper to headline, was investigation. Fans were calling on the WTA, calling on tournament officials, demanding that the circumstances of the retirement be examined, that the timing of the medical timeouts be reviewed, that the question be asked openly and on record, was this a genuine medical emergency or a tactical withdrawal designed to rob Eala of what would have been the most significant win of her young career? Let that sink in. People were accusing Coco Gauff, a 2-time Grand Slam champion, a player with an otherwise spotless professional reputation, of faking an injury to avoid losing. And the tennis world, whether it wanted to or not, was paying attention. But wait, before you form your own opinion, you need to hear what Coco Gauff actually said, because what she revealed in that press conference changes everything. Coco Gauff didn't hide. She didn't deflect. She walked into that post-match press conference and she answered every question, directly, emotionally, and with a level of honesty that, if you were willing to listen, made the conspiracy theories collapse under their own weight. She explained that the pain started in the second game of the match. The second game, before any of the double faults, before the medical timeout, before the scoreline became embarrassing. Right at the very beginning, when she was still leading, when she had just broken Eala's serve, when there was no strategic reason in the world to fabricate anything. The pain hit her on a forehand, and from that moment it got progressively worse, not just during shots, but she made a point of saying this, even when she wasn't using her arm, even on shots that didn't involve her left arm. Pain that spread, that escalated, that built into something she had never felt before in her career. "I've never had anything like this before, never felt anything, a sensation like this before," she said plainly. And then as the match played, it got progressively worse, even when I wasn't using my arm on shots that I wasn't even using my left arm for. And here is the moment that silences the doubters. Gauff said, and this is important, that she would rather have finished the match and lost 6-0 than retire. 6-0. She used those exact words. A Grand Slam champion saying she would have accepted a 6-0 defeat. Does that sound like a woman trying to protect her reputation? Does that sound like ego? Does that sound like gamesmanship? She didn't walk off because the scoreline was humiliating. She walked off because the doctors told her the nerve pain she was experiencing could get worse, could be serious, and she did not know what she was dealing with. Then she went further. She took to Instagram, publicly, not in a private statement, and posted a message that addressed her fans and gave Eala her flowers at the same time. She wrote, and these are her words, "Hey everyone, thanks for the sweet messages. I felt a weird pain in my left arm in the second game of the match. I tried to continue, but it was getting more intense. As most of you know, I rarely have to end matches with a retirement. But because it was an unfamiliar pain, I decided it was best to not continue. Never felt anything like this before. Going to get an MRI tomorrow to see what's up, but I'll be okay. Good luck to Eala the rest of the way. Always a pleasure sharing the court with you." She was getting an MRI, a magnetic resonance imaging scan. You don't order an MRI for gamesmanship. You don't send your player for nerve pain evaluation if the plan was to fake it for tactical advantage. The medical team suspected nerve involvement. They treated it as a genuine, undisclosed, potentially serious neurological event in the arm of a 21-year-old athlete, one with no prior history of this injury in only her second career retirement from a professional match. The WTA confirmed there was no investigation because there was nothing to investigate. While the internet was busy constructing theories and filing moral complaints, Alexandra Eala was doing something that, if we are being completely truthful, the moment deserved far more attention than it got. She was being extraordinary. Think about what this night meant for Eala. This was her tournament debut at the BNP Paribas Open, her first career match on stadium court. Not a small court, not a practice facility, but Stadium 1 at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, one of the most famous tennis venues on the planet. She was the first player from the Philippines ever to contest the main draw at this tournament. She had taken the long road here, from number 140 in the world 12 months ago, grinding through qualifying tournaments, building her game, refining her tactics, learning from every loss. And she had beaten Gauff 2 weeks after being absolutely taken apart by her. That is not luck. That is growth. That is resilience. That is the work. And yet, in the moment of her greatest individual triumph at Indian Wells so far, Eala's first words were not about herself. She opened her on-court interview on International Women's Day by thanking all the women who had paved the way in tennis history. She turned to face the crowd, and she said, "I want to say thank you to all the incredible women who have paved the way and who have advocated for themselves and for other women. Among them is Coco. So thank you, Coco, for being an amazing competitor and amazing role model. I really hope everything is well and you will recover soon." She called her opponent a role model, the player she had just beaten, the player some of her own fans were directing anger toward. In her moment of triumph, Eala chose grace. She chose gratitude. She chose to honor the context of the evening, International Women's Day, and everything it meant, rather than revel in a result that was handed to her by unfortunate circumstance. And then she talked about her mother. Riza Eala was sitting in the stands, watching her daughter compete on the biggest stage of her career. And Eala said, "I want to thank her for being the amazing woman that she is and for helping me become the woman that I am." Her mother blew kisses from the stands. The moment was captured. The moment went viral. Not for controversy, not for accusation, for love, for everything that women's tennis, at its best, is supposed to represent. This was the real story of that night. Not the conspiracy theories, not the investigation that never happened, not the accusations that dissolved the moment Gauff walked to that press conference and told the truth. The real story was a 20-year-old woman from the Philippines in her tournament debut on International Women's Day, playing some of the finest tennis of her career, and then, in victory, choosing to lift the woman she had beaten. That is what sport is supposed to look like. Coco Gauff did not fake an injury. There was no investigation. There were no dirty tactics. What there was a 21-year-old champion in real pain, making the hardest decision a competitor can make and doing it with class. What there was a 20-year-old Filipina superstar playing the best tennis of her life and handling victory with a grace that the moment deserved. What there was women's tennis in all its complexity, its emotion, and its beauty playing out on the biggest stage on International Women's Day for the whole world to see. The sport is in extraordinary hands. If this story moved you, if you believe the truth matters more than the clicks, hit that subscribe button right now. We cover women's tennis the way it deserves to be covered, with honesty, with depth, and with the respect these athletes have earned. Drop a comment below. Do you think the internet went too far with Gauff, or did the questions need to be asked? We read every single one.